Good morning, children. Welcome to your SST class. Today we are beginning with chapter 7 of history, that is New Ideas and Great Thinkers. Children, the chapter is about the new philosophical ideas and great thinkings that took birth during that time due to particular political, economic and social changes in the society. So the first point in the chapter is the changes in the Vedic society, in the Vedic period. Children, this is the picture of Vedic society. Now, before starting with the changes in Vedic society, let me tell you briefly about the Vedic period. The period from 1500 BC to 600 BC is generally called the Vedic age. The beginning of the Vedic age, in which the Rig Veda was written, is called the Rig Vedic age. And the later part of this, that is 1000 BC to 600 BC, is referred to as the later Vedic age. It was during this period that the later three Vedas were written, which is Yajurveda, Samveda and Atharvaveda. So let us start with the changes in Vedic society. First change, the emergence of ruling class and hereditary nature of kingship led to the rise of small kingdoms and republics. You have already read about hereditary nature of kingship. Hereditary nature means when a king dies, after the death of king, his son will take place. He will attain the kingship, that is hereditary nature of kingship. So due to the emergence, due to the coming ruling classes and hereditary nature of kingship, it gave birth to the rise of small kingdoms and republics, means independent states, out of which emerged some of the first great empires of ancient India. Frequent wars between Mahajanpads. Mahajanpads means very big states or Janpads, created an environment of distrust and violence for the common people. There was a kind of insecurity between common people, and they faced many as economic changes, so there came materialistic challenges also. And that's why the people felt the need to search for the peace of mind. This period saw the rise of big cities, increase in population, trade was flourishing, means business, trade was growing, taking development, and emergence of coinage system. Coins were minted, were developed during that time. As trade was flourishing, so coins were also developed, and the rural economy, that's why also developed, and a number of people moved from one place to another, and they brought their ideas, their stories with them to new places. The rigidity in Varna system made the Brahmins most powerful. So children, at that time Varna system was quite rigid. Rigid means it was not flexible, it was quite non-flexible, hard. There was strict division between the society, in the society, and there were four divisions. So first is Brahmins, second Kshatriyas, third Vaishyas, and fourth is Shudras. Shudras were the lowest. Shudras, the lowest, would had to lead a life of degradation, means a lower life. They had no rights, they had no value in the society. Though many Vaishyas had become rich through trade, but their social position was also low. So who were Vaishyas? Vaishyas they were some common traders. They were doing small trading, small works, business. So they were becoming rich, but in spite of that, their position in society was not good. So all these factors resulted in the rise and growth of new ideas and philosophies in the society. The people wanted to get some simple religious beliefs that they could understand and follow easily. And in that environment, two new religions took birth, that is Buddhism and Jainism. Buddhism founded by Gautam Buddha and Jainism founded by Vardhaman Mahavir. They respectively became very popular during that time because of the simplicity of ideas of those philosophies. And we learn about these new ideas from the Upanishads. Upanishads are religious texts that were written by Brahmins, and the Buddhist and Jain religious texts which were also written during that time. So now let us come to Upanishads. So you can see in the picture, first picture is of Buddhism of Gautam Buddha and second is representing Jainism, Lord Mahavira. So now let us discuss the Upanishads. What are Upanishads? Upanishads are the sacred writings, and the earliest Upanishads began to be written toward the end of the later Vedic age and continued to be written well after 500 BC. Later Vedic age, I have told you, that is 1000 to 600 BC, that is later Vedic age. And Upanishads contain some conversations, some kind of discussions between teachers and students through which fundamental questions relating to existence of mankind, humankind are addressed. Means in those Upanishads, students and teachers used to discuss about the value of the life of a human being. Like what is the importance of the existence of a human life? What are the facts? What is the philosophy behind the existence of this human life? All these things were discussed in Upanishads, and all these ideas we find written in Upanishads. So Upanishads are the text of religious teaching and ideas which are still respected in Hinduism. They are the most recent part of oldest scriptures of Hinduism. And the main focus in Upanishad is on Brahma, which is considered the universal spirit, means God, and Atma, that is the individual self or soul. Atma is an Hindi word which means Atma, soul. Atma is separate from the body of a person. The Atma or soul takes another birth after the death of a man. It was believed that the Atma or soul takes another birth after the death of a man, and this cycle of birth and death continues, and the karma of man decides that he will get new birth. What kind of new birth? In order to get rid of this cycle of birth and death, a man should seek salvation, means moksha, mukti, which means union of this Atma and Brahma. Thus many of the thinkers whose writings, verses are contained in the Upanishads believed that ultimately both the Atma and Brahma were one, similar. Others wanted to know about many other things. There were some contradictions between the writers of Upanishads. They wanted to know about life after death, while some of them wanted to know why sacrifices are done, why sacrifices are required in the society, which Brahmins were motivating, which Brahmins were giving very much importance. And some of the earliest Upanishads, now we are going to watch some of the earliest Upanishads. You need to just learn the names of these Upanishads. These are earliest Upanishads. So first one is Brihad Aranyaka, and then is Chandogya Upanishads, while the Taittiriya Upanishad and Aitreya Upanishads were two of the important ones, but these were later ones. They were composed around 400 BC. The earliest were Brihad Aranyaka and Chandogya. There were also some great women thinkers who contributed their thoughts to Upanishads. For example, Maitreyi and Gargi. It should also be noted that although the poor people usually could not participate in the intellectual discussions, at that time there was a person named Satyakam Jabala. He was the son of a slave woman named Jabali, and he acquired a respectable position in the society despite being a poor person. He used to be known as a knowledgeable thinker, as a very good philosopher. Who was the teacher of this Satyakama Jabala? It was Gautam Buddha. He was educated by a Brahmin teacher named Gautam. So here we start with Buddhism. So let us first discuss early life of Gautam Buddha. Buddhism was a new religion founded by Gautam Buddha in 600 BC. His original name was Siddhartha Gautam. He is thought to have been born in Lumbini in modern day Nepal and raised in small kingdom of or state of Kapilvastu. Principality means state of Kapilvastu. His father King Shuddhodana was the leader of Shakya clan, means it was an important political party of that time. His father was the leader and his name was Shuddhodana, whose capital was Kapilvastu. It was later annexed, means later won by the growing kingdom of Kosala during the Buddha's lifetime. And the name of Buddha's mother's name was Mahamaya, who also belonged to an aristocratic family, means who belonged to a very rich family. Shuddhodana raised his son in luxury and indulgence, means Gautam Buddha lived a very life full of all kind of enjoyments, all kind of comforts in his childhood. And his father tried to keep him attached to sensual pleasures to ensure that he should not live the worldly life as the sages are suggesting. As the sages means वो जो संत होते हैं, they had prophesied, means they are suggesting, they are preaching. Siddhartha married Yashodhara at the age of 16, who subsequently gave birth to their son Rahul. Throughout these early years of his life, Siddhartha knew nothing of the natural human sufferings that were taking place in the world. But there is an important story behind all these attainments, this enlightenment of Gautam Buddha. It is a very interesting story. It is said that one day he persuaded his charioteer Chana to show him a nearby town. On the way to the town, he saw an old man, a sick man, and some people carrying a dead body to the cremation ground. Not having seen old age before, sickness and death, he was naturally deeply shocked. In fact, Gautam was so shocked that he didn't find the palace life pleasurable now, and he left that all worldly pleasures and became an ascetic. Ascetic means a person who gives up all worldly pleasures, a sadhu kind of person. He wanted to discover the truth of life for himself. So it was at this moment Gautam Buddha realized that he should discover the truth of life for himself, as nothing is hidden in these worldly pleasures. These all are false and fake. He spent a long and exhausting period in searching for truth, and he took up the path of self-mortification. Means he gave up all worldly pleasures. He lived a very simple life. He did meditation for a number of years. While meditating under a peepal tree, it was a peepal tree under which he did meditation for a long time at Bodh Gaya, which is in Bihar in India. He experienced the enlightenment and he attained the status of the Buddhahood when he was 35 years old. He then went to Sarnath near Varanasi, where he preached his first sermon. He spent the rest of his life traveling on foot, going from place to place, teaching people, and then he passed away at Kausinagar when he was 80 years old. So now let us come to the teachings of Buddha. See, here he is preaching other people, and he is doing meditation under peepal tree. So you can have a glance of how the life of Buddha had been at that time. Now let us come to the teachings of Buddha. Buddha didn't believe in fruitless controversy regarding soul or Atma and God. Means the meaningless discussion regarding Atma or soul which was done previously. And in order to explain the true meaning of life, the existence, he gave 4 noble truths. He said, worldly existence is full of misery and sorrow. The misery has a cause. The cause of this misery is desire. The cause of sorrow is desire. And misery and sorrow can be ended by killing the desire. Desire means ichha. So if we kill the desire, all the miseries and sorrows of the world can be killed. The original teachings of Gautam Buddha are contained in Triptikas, Tripitkas, meaning 3 baskets. The names of these 3 baskets are Sut Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, Abhidaman Pitaka. The Jataka stories are the stories based on previous births of Buddha and his companions. Now Buddha is again telling, he is saying desire can be killed by following the 8-fold paths. Means he is giving 8 paths that are called as Ashtangika Marg, which are right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. Gautam Buddha suggested the middle path to his followers. He preached non-violence and truth. But he didn't want his followers to denounce, to give up, to abandon material life to the extreme. He said that do not give up your worldly life totally. And I'm not suggesting that you live a life of a hermit only. Means like a sadhu, you live in forest and live a life of hermit and give up all material, all worldly things, pleasures. Instead, he suggested a code of conduct for all the followers. He suggested an alternate path, a middle path. Thus, the central idea of Buddha's teaching was, he said that live a holy life which is based on the high system of ethics. Ethics means moral values. And he said that we should not neglect that worldly responsibilities. Worldly responsibilities means the responsibility toward our family. Gautam Buddha used local languages like Pali and Magdi for discourses on religion. Means whenever he did any discussion on religion, he used these languages, Pali and Magdi. It brought the religion into direct contact with common people. Common masses means common people. There were several forms of Prakrit used in different parts of country and named after the regions in which they were used. Prakrit we have already read in the first chapter of History Children. Prakrit is the language used by common people in Tamil. It is also spoken and as it is spoken in Magad, and there it is known as Magdi. And now 3 types of scriptures were built during the ancient period of Indian history as a result of Buddhist influence, which were stupas, chaityas and vihars. Stupas were constructed over some Buddhist relics. Chaityas were the place of worship where monks used to worship. There was a place known as chaityas. And vihars were Buddhist monasteries. Buddhist monasteries means where monks lived. Monks means the male members of Buddhist religion lived. That is Buddhist monasteries, which were known as vihars. Now we are coming to next part, that is Jainism. The most famous thinker of the Jains is Vardhaman Mahavir. He spread his message around this time, that is 2500 years ago. He was a Kshatriya prince of Lichavis, a group. Lichavis is a group that was part of Vaji Sangh. Vaji Sangh is a Mahajanpad. Mahajanpad means a very big state. So he belonged to Kshatriya Varn, Kshatriya caste, and he was the Kshatriya prince of Lichavis. His father Siddharth was an important ruler of Kshatriya clan. Kshatriya clans means his father was an important member of the Kshatriya caste, Kshatriya Varn, and his mother was a princess in that Lichavi group. His mother was a Lichavi princess. He was married to Yashoda and also had a daughter named Priyadarshana. At the age of 30, Lord Mahavira left home and went to live in a forest for 12 years. He led a hard and lonely life there, at the end of which he became a Jina. Jina is, which means conqueror. Conqueror means that person has complete a victory over his mind and soul. And at the age of 42, he became that kind of Jinnah, a conqueror. According to Jain tradition, he was the 24th Tirthankar. Tirthankar means Jinnah. And he has given 5 main principles to his followers. So here the first is, do not commit violence, do not speak a lie, do not steal, do not acquire property, and observe celibacy. Celibacy means like he preferred non-marital life. One should not live a married life, celibacy. So Jainism mainly aims at the attainment of freedom. Jainism mainly attains at the attainment of freedom from worldly bonds. So unlike Gautam Buddha, who said that we should not totally abandon our worldly responsibilities, Lord Mahavira, which belonged to Jainism philosophy, he preferred totally freedom from worldly bonds, and he said that no ritual is required for acquiring this freedom. No traditional practice is needed for getting this liberation, this ajadi, this kind of freedom. He said the only 3 jewels we need to follow, and Lord Mahavira suggested the directions to guide his followers. The 3 features of the path suggested by Mahavira are called 3 jewels, 3 ratan. These are right knowledge, right belief, right action. These are known as 3 ratan or 3 jewels of Jainism. This is important. You need to learn the names of these 3 ratan. Jainism was essentially a non-violent religion like Buddhism, that was also non-violent. According to Lord Mahavir, every object in this world has life, and in no circumstance we should cause any damage to them. Vardhman Mahavira, he died when he was 72 at Pavpuri near Rajgriha in Magad. He also told his followers in Prakrit language. So this extra information is telling us, children, that there was one more philosopher, one very good philosopher in Jainism. His name was Rishabh. He was known as first Tirthankar, and this Vardhman Mahavira, Lord Mahavira, was the 24th Tirthankar or Jinnah. So moving on forward, gradually Jainism spread to Odisha, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. It got the patronage of kings and rich merchants. Patronage means many king or rich merchants favored Jainism. They spent money on spreading this Jain philosophy, Jain religion among common people. And they constructed, these kings and rich merchants constructed impressive, very good Jain temples. One of the most famous temples are Dilwara temple. You can see the picture. This is Dilwara temple at Mount Abu. The Jain texts are called Purvas, and the text means the religious writing of Jains are known as Purvas, and they are further divided into Angas and Upangas. Angas sections, Upangas means minor sections. The subdivisions of Angas are Upangas. Sanghs. Both the Buddhist and Jain monks were organized into Sanghs. There were certain rules that every monk and nun had to follow for living in those Sanghs. The Buddhist text, the religious writing for Buddhism, it was known as Vinaya Pitaka, tell us that all bhikshus and bhikshunis, means bhikshu means the male members and bhikshunis means female members. Another name for them is monks and nuns. They said it is written in Buddhist text, which is Vinaya Pitaka, that they had to join the Sangh with the permission of their elders, with the permission of their elder family members from their parents. And they had to get up early in Sangh. They had to go to beg for alms, bhik mangne, in the village or town. Whatever was collected was shared by all of the monks and nuns, and small disputes or quarrels were also settled. Both the Buddhist and Jain monks were expected to dress very simply, and they lived a disciplined life in Sanghs. Now, Buddhist and Jain monasteries and vihars. Vihars, the places where they were living. So those who became the Buddhist or Jain monks and nuns required to leave their homes and live in vihars or monasteries. This simple kind of house, it is known as vihar, where those Buddhist or Jain monks and nuns used to live, required to live after leaving their homes. These were initially the natural caves or some temporary shelters, but gradually permanent structures were built for this purpose. A large number of vihars are found in Maharashtra. The largest Buddhist monastery in India is located at Wang in Arunachal Pradesh. The Ellora caves in Nashik, Maharashtra are archaeological sites that comprise rock-cut temples and monasteries of three different religions, which are Buddhist, Hindu and Jain, built at the same place between 500 to 10,000 AD. With this, your chapter ends. I hope it is clear to you, my dear children. Thank you, and I wish you a happy reading.